It's been a while since I did a roundup review, but since I spent most, if not all, of October watching horror films, I've been pretty far behind on Netflix movies, and I've also finally seen some large notice independent films gearing up for award season. We've got a lot of films to get through in this roundup review, so let's get started. Saw this at a screening the day after Halloween 2018. It got lost in the shuffle of the season, but it floored me in many ways. Joel Edgerton writes, directs, and co-stars with incredible restraint and a sensitive touch to the powerful true story of a young gay man sent to gay conversion therapy. Lucas Hedges is fantastic in the lead, and Nicole Kidman is surprisingly the best part. Edgerton is great. Troye Sivan and Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist Flea also appear with some really solid performances, and Russell Crowe is almost unrecognizable. Some of the themes need a little bit more explanation, and it's a generally slow film, but Boy Erased is effective and impactful in the end. This came close to getting a full review, but I realized that there's not really that much to say that isn't just Timothée Chalamet and Steve Carell are great, everything else is mediocre. Those two lead performances are great, and I did love Ruben Impen's cinematography, but Felix van Groningen isn't great at subtlety. This is a repetitive, exhausting, middle-level look at addiction that should be better. Oh well. I get the feeling from Napoli Ever After that it wasn't for me. This is a Netflix movie that taught me some important lessons about the public and private perceptions of black women, particularly around their hair. Sanaa Lathan is great as the protagonist, but the themes and story of this character are still wrapped into a middle-of-the-road movie that doesn't know when to be a comedy or a drama. It has serious tone problems, and it just really wasn't for me. A slow-burning psychological drama set in Alaska, starring Jeffrey Wright and Alexander Skarsgård, and directed by Green Room's Jeremy Saulnier? Count me in. And then I watched it. Now you can count me out. The story, the characters, the themes, everything was there, but so little of it came together well enough for me to feel changed or moved in the end. It largely just feels like scenes happening and little to connect at all. I'm pretty disappointed with Hold the Dark, despite it having everything that I really want. The third Netflix movie I watched in a matter of days, Apostle, like Hold the Dark, boasted a killer premise with a great cast of Dan Stevens, Lucy Boynton, and Michael Sheen, and a high-demand director with The Raid and The Raid 2's Gareth Evans. And just like Hold the Dark, the individual elements are great, but so little comes together in the end that I just don't really care. It flashes with little moments of brilliance, but just settles for mediocre in general. This is another disappointment for me. Yeah, even though I'm excited for anything that Gareth Evans does, like Apostle, I have to admit that I don't actually like either of the Raid movies. The action is great, but the style and the Indonesian language turns me off and keeps me at bay with actually caring. The same is entirely true for The Night Comes For Us, which has Joe Taslim and Iko Uwais from The Raid kicking all kinds of ass, but I just don't care for the style or it being an Indonesian film. It's a shame, but that's just how I feel. The fifth Netflix movie I watched in a row, certainly the most high profile and luckily an improvement on the last four. Chris Pine does a great job playing Scottish medieval hero Robert the Bruce in a brutal, bloody, engrossing medieval drama with obvious yet forgivable flaws. It can feel static and unmoving at times, contrasted sharply with sudden battles featuring excessive violence and gore. Luckily, director David Mackenzie, who made another Chris Pine movie, Hell or High Water, cares more about the relationship between Robert and his wife Elizabeth de Burgh, played so well by Florence Pugh. In the end, I learned a lot about medieval history, though it does take some liberties. I got great performances from Pine, Pugh, and also Aaron Taylor-Johnson as the Black Douglas. It's a better story about freedom and independence than Braveheart, and has some awesome Battle of the Bastards style brutal action. It's not a great film, but it's still surprisingly enjoyable. The last Netflix movie I watched in my little binge, and arguably the best one. 22 July has some obvious flaws. It's a daunting runtime of nearly 2.5 hours for a very disturbing true story. The actors are mostly Norwegian unknowns, so it's a gamble for getting good performances from them. I would have preferred the movie to be entirely in Norwegian and not English, and Greengrass's style allows for nothing but harrowing, heavy drama. It wasn't exceptional and at times felt obviously low budget, but it still delivered eloquent statements about grief, family, loss, recovery, and dived sharply into the mind of Andres Breivik, showing him as he was with very little bias. 22 July would have benefited the most from being a miniseries, but it is a step in the right direction for Paul Greengrass. Wildlife is one of those buzzy indie films that will get some recognition for the performances of the two biggest stars, but I got far more from the real star of the film, Australia's own Ed Oxenbould. Oxenbould is fantastic as his character, a kid learning to be a self-made man in a small Montana town in the 1950s, and yes, the performances from Carey Mulligan and Jake Gyllenhaal are very good, and the writing is quite insightful, but I also didn't feel much for the movie in the end. Wildlife is Paul Dano's directorial debut, and it's a solid one, but just needed a bit more. Everything is so pared back that it's really kind of hard to dive in. I'll be in the minority on this one though. And the final movie on my review roundup is Ryuichi Sakamoto Coda, the documentary all about the legendary Japanese composer Ryuichi Sakamoto. I'm a massive fan of Sakamoto's works, and this film delivered a calming, meditative look at the life of a fantastic creative as he comes to terms with his own mortality, the shrinking life of the world, the meaning of his own creativity, and particularly how he pushes himself to the excellence that we know from him. It's gorgeously shot, sensitive, moving, deeply insightful, and filled with Sakamoto's transcendent music from start to finish. I saw this in incredibly limited release. I don't know when it would be available to a wider audience, but any chance you can, listen to Sakamoto's incredible music before and then revel in this marvelous documentary. Whew. That's 10 films covered from the months of September and October from many platforms across the film world. I hope you did enjoy this roundup review. I'll have another one coming in a month or so covering the best films of the year that I didn't review in time. Have you seen all 10 films in this review? What did you think about it? What did you think about this roundup review? Let me know down below, and if you want more Mr. Movies, follow the links coming up right now, and thank you for watching.